Welcome to Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, straight from the bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
Rolling down this highway, trying to make my way back home. I hope she's still there waiting. It's been a long time I've been gone, playing from town to town.
Season 6, Episode 10. Thanks again for joining. I'm Mike Wilner.
And I'm Liz Wolfe.
And today, Liz is bringing us an incredible conversation with Greg Blake, two-time IBMA male vocalist award winner, nominated again this year, by the way, Liz.
That's right. And he was an amazing person to talk to, so deeply knowledgeable, and can't wait to share that. Yeah. And then Mike and I are going to do a quick recap of our Grey Fox experience because we just got back.
Yeah, great experience it was. So what do you have going on now, Liz?
Well, I feel like I'm right in the thick of it because I didn't even unpack my suitcase from Grey Fox because I'm going to repack everything after do my laundry and get ready to go to WIN Gap, which is happening July 29th through August 2nd. I should clarify and say AFBA WIN Gap in WIN Gap, PA. Followed immediately the next week by the Podunk Festival, August 5th through 9th. And I was just listening to the Spotify list of the artists that they have coming, which are really good this year. Wow. And then followed by the very next week, the Ashokan Bluegrass Camp, which is August 10th through 14th up at Ashokan, one of our iconic venues.
I'm getting tired just listening.
And then I have a week off and I'm headed up for the Wernick Method Camp up in Silver Bay with Pete Wernick and Austin Skelzo from August 23rd through 29th. So I'm right in the thick of it. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, not quite that thick, but our friends down at the Augusta Heritage Center in Elkins, West Virginia, are having their Bluegrass Week, August 3rd through 7th. And it's a really well-organized event. It's right in the middle of town. Everything's one block from everything else. Well worth checking out. Finally, September 4th through 6th, the Earl Scruggs Music Festival. All bluegrass lovers, but especially banjo lovers, may want to head down to Mill Spring, North Carolina, and check it out.
Which I would go to, except I'm hosting my Labor Day weekend camp and jam at my upstate house, which people may also be interested in coming to if they don't want to go all the way to North Carolina. So please remember to follow, like, and subscribe to our podcast. And you can find us online at bluegrassbrooklyn.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. You can reach out to Mike at bluegrassbrooklyn.com, or you can look for jams on the West Side, Uptown, in Manhattan, Riverdale, City Island, the Bronx, and all around the world at bluegrassjamsnearme.com.
Awesome. So is that it, Liz?
That's it. Let's get to the interview.
Yeah, let's roll.
Just a victim of the game.
Well, welcome. I'm here with Greg Blake. He is a singer and guitarist with Special Consensus, a 50-year running band. But of course, that's not all he does. He's also a singer on his own right, a banjo player. No, you're not a banjo player. Are you a banjo player?
Oh, you don't want to hear me play banjo.
Okay.
But a little better than fiddle.
Okay. So I can get guitar, maybe banjo, not really.
Mandolin, and then fiddle.
Okay, mandolin and fiddle. All right. I've had the good fortune to have a few times to hang out with Greg, one of which being last year at the Ashokan Bluegrass Camp. He was there as an instructor, specifically for guitar at that time. And then, of course, I also got to spend time with Greg during the Leadership Bluegrass program that I participated in. And depending on people are hearing this, that was in 2026. So he's got his fingers in a lot of different places. Also, Singer of the Year for IBMA 2023 and 2025.
Correct, yes.
You got some Spigma awards under your belt as well.
Yeah, from years back.
Which award was most exciting for you to win?
Oh, it was definitely the IBMA Male Vocalist of the Year. That was, and I wasn't even ready for it. I mean, that was the second year that I was nominated for that particular award. And I know it probably sounds cliche, but it's especially true for me. Just making it to the 5 final nominees, that was just, I was over the moon, because just seeing my name and hearing my name mentioned among some of bluegrass's greatest singers, and the artists that I learned to sing bluegrass from by listening to them over and over, Del McCurry, Danny Paisley, Larry Spark, all those guys. And then you see this name, Greg Blake, in that company. I mean, that was award enough for me. But then the following year I got nominated again, and sure enough, well, that kind of confirmed it. I mean, first year, maybe that's a fluke. Yes. What?
Maybe people were talking about some other Greg, but
Yeah.
mixed me up with somebody or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, my wife and I, Joy Sue, were sitting in the audience at the awards show that Thursday night at the World of Bluegrass in Raleigh, and my name was called, and I hadn't even prepared any kind of acceptance speech, because oh no, I mean, I'm nominated. Yeah, that's wonderful, but I'll never get it. And sure enough, my name was called, and my wife had to nudge me. She said, "Hey, that's you."
That's good.
Yeah.
And that happened not just once, but twice.
Yeah. Liz, the words just can't explain or describe it for me. I mean, it's such an honor to be named male vocalist again, when there are so many great singers out there and so many just as deserving. It's really special. So I'm extremely thankful and grateful, honored.
So how much of the awards, just so that the listeners know, at the time of this recording, the ballots have just opened round one, which means that everybody and anybody could go on and nominate whoever they want. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. And yeah, as far as for those individual awards like that, as long as you're a voting member or professional member of the IBMA, the International Bluegrass Music Association, you can nominate anybody. So the first round is kind of like a quote unquote nominating round. But the kicker is, to move on to round two, you have to get at least 20 different nominations.
Okay.
So then that populates ballot number 2. And then from those, I want to say they also take it's like the top 20 or 25 nominee getters. That's not a correct phrase. Whoever,
Right.
whoever the top 25 who gets the most nominations.
Okay.
There's a number there. So those are on the second ballot, and then you vote for 5 of those, and then the top 5 vote getters will then be on ballot number 3, and then so you vote for 1 of those, and then those are also the 5 nominees that are announced at the awards show on Thursday of the IBMA conference, World of Bluegrass, and then nobody knows who the winners are until that night.
Did they tell you that you're nominated before they announce it, or how does that work?
Yes. Matter of fact, there is a live press conference in Nashville, and usually it's broadcast over Sirius XM, Bluegrass Junction, and they will announce then the 5 final nominees for each category of awards.
Now, did your life change dramatically after you won your awards?
I don't know if I would say dramatically, but yeah, definitely. There's definitely a, for lack of a better term, mystique that comes with winning the awards, and especially some of those categories like vocalist of the year, guitar player of the year, banjo player of the year, et cetera. And yeah, there's definitely some more recognition that comes from that, because in the bluegrass world, you would think, as small as it is, everybody knows everybody, but that's not the case. There's a lot of places I go, even now, like to perform the first time, and I'll have 2 or 3 come up to me and say, I didn't know who you were, but I can see why you won that award. And they'll say something like, And I'll be following you from now on, listening from now on. So, we all have our little group of artists that we like and that we're particular about and partial to. And, the bluegrass community is made up of a lot of fans and listeners from small towns. I don't think they're always necessarily up on the latest artists and so forth and so on. And even though I've been in the business a long time, I really didn't start full time until 2015, just a little over 10 years ago. So I was a weekend warrior, just like hundreds of other bluegrass artists who are out there even yet today.
And what had you make that switch?
Well, I had been in my other career, which was I was in full-time Christian ministry. I was a pastor, counselor, educator, and I taught 15 years in the college classroom. And I did some other denominational work, both nationally and internationally. But the music has always been a part of my life from as early as I can remember. Got my first guitar when I was 7 years old. And that was to accompany myself singing. I've been singing as far back as I have any kind of recollection. But yeah, I've been in the ministry full time for 30 plus years. And it just seemed like that things were working out to where one aspect of my life work was diminishing and the music aspect, doors were opening. And so I walked through those doors and here I am today. So
I want to get back to something that you said, which was that you were nominated with a whole bunch of other really wonderful, great singers.
Mhm.
What do you think gives a vocalist that quality of being a great singer?
I think connecting with the listener on not only a technical, physical, oral level, but more of almost an existential level as well. The way I like to describe it, Liz, is, I'll sacrifice tonal qualities in a singer if they really speak to my heart and in their delivery and the way that they phrase the song and the emotion that they put in it. And they're just something intangible, if you would, the way they connect with you as a listener. It's almost as if you think, there's 100 other people in this room, or there's 1,000 more people than myself in this room, but I feel like she or he's singing right to me. And I'm really connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that makes a great singer. In addition to the technical aspect of it, there's always intonation and richness of tone and those vocal qualities that we all appreciate at that level and in that arena. Their professionalism, their stage presence, things like that. I think what really makes a great singer is the way that she or he really makes a connection with their listeners. Two of the best compliments that I ever get. One is from hearing challenged audience members. They say, like I go to a concert and sometimes I think I shouldn't even go because I have such difficulty in actually just hearing anything. But then they'll say to me, I'm so glad I came tonight because I heard every word you sang.
Wow.
And that made a difference for them that evening. And then the second compliment that I get, it just really makes me feel good, is that, I could listen to you all night. And that's really saying something because, I don't know if I could listen to me all night.
Yeah, for a lot of us to listen back to ourselves singing or playing or whatever, we all do I want to listen to my...
Yeah, it's still a chore for me. It's still one of the most agonizing things I have to do when I listen back to myself. I said, I was flat there. Oh man, I could have done that differently. we're our own worst critics, but
Yeah, almost everyone I've ever spoken to on this podcast or elsewise has that. The way you just said, "Oh, I'm flat there," because I often listen back to myself singing, and I'm just wondering to myself, "What am I listening for?" So that goes back to, what do you think makes a great singer? Do you think that if someone's a little flat or singing off key, or I often look for the dynamics of how someone's
Yes.
singing in terms of, is it all one tone? I mean, as much as I adored Whitney Houston, on zero criticism, but there's a lot of the same, right? It's a very, very
yeah.
kind of a thing. So what is the experience that I'm having in listening? Or I should say, what is the journey that the singer might take me on during the course of a song or a record?
Yes, yeah, I like that imagery, because I'm talking about connection and engagement, but you engage in this journey between the singer, the performer, and the audience or the listener. And I mean, I've said it a million times, and this kind of goes not only in an individual context, but in a more corporate context of, say, even like an ensemble or a band or a group. I am not interested at all in going to see a performance where there is no engagement between the performer and the audience.
Mhm.
I mean, just going through one song after the other with hardly any interaction other than this next song we're going to do is they give the title and then they jump right in it, and it's just, there's just no engagement and interaction between the performer and the audience, not only in between the songs, but I guess what we're really talking about is more that surreal connection that I think I used the word earlier, almost like existential or metaphysical even, that connection that you embark upon this journey with the performer and you're there with her or him throughout the song, maybe, or throughout the concert. And that's how you gauge your experience, whether it was good, better, or best, one that you've ever had. That's what I've said so many times in my vocal workshops and vocal coaching that I do on an individual level as well. Is how do you tell the story? How do you relay the story? Make sure that even though the communication is two-way, the impetus is on you, the singer, to make sure that you deliver the message.
I want to go back to what you were saying about having your own critical voice. Do you think there's anybody on the planet that doesn't think critically of themselves when they listen back to what they did?
Probably not, Liz. And boy, we could really go off on a tangent here, but there's a little something that I like to talk about called self-awareness.
Okay.
And that's in many different types of categories. But to answer your question, I don't think there's anybody on the planet that isn't critical of themselves. But to the degree to which they're critical of themselves depends upon how aware they are and how accurate their own self-assessment is. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. What's coming up for me is there's really two ways you could take that, right? You could take it, well, really three ways. One is the middle way, which is I want to hear myself and be critical so I can get better.
Yep.
And learn from it. And I was a little flat and maybe I need to work on that. The other way is the perfectionist way, which is still not good enough, still not good enough, still not good enough, never will be good enough. Okay.
Yes. Right.
And then the third way, which would be where I feel a lot of people are in their entry to bluegrass, where they will lead with the words, I don't sing or I can't sing. And then they're so critical of themselves. That inner critic is so pervasive that they've just decided that they don't or can't sing. And, people listening to this might be rolling their eyes right now because they'll be like, yes, Liz, you've talked about this before. Let's talk about it one more time. I just did a Wernick jamming class this past weekend. And one of the people came in, he said, I don't sing. Now, this is a professional bass player who's played this with bands his whole life, mostly rock, getting into banjo and playing. And he
Yes.
sang during the weekend. And he said he went home and he told his wife he sang, and she couldn't believe it because he'd never sung before. And I'm listening to him. I'm like, dude, you're a perfectly good singer. Am I going to run you out to get on an album without a little work? No, but literally there was nothing wrong with how he was singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so many ways you could take that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And then there's a handful out there that where the self-awareness is not tuned in enough to where they think, well, I can sing just as good as he can, or as he can. And, they think they may need a little bit more acclaim than what they're getting. And so there is that as well. And I think that's probably the most difficult to deal with, because there doesn't seem to be any desire to take constructive criticism and apply it, or much less even take the time to listen to it, much less whether or not I'm going to apply it or not.
Yeah.
I don't want to even hear that. But the idea of at least you can listen back to what you're singing, recording, a rehearsal, or whatever, and then just brace yourself and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that differently. And then just work on improving yourself. I know that's tough work.
But one thing I think that's a mistake that people make with singing is that this idea of naturally good singers, and they're not thinking of it like it's an instrument that they have to practice just like any other instrument.
Right.
And I'm not going to say that there aren't people who take to something more easily, whether it is the guitar, the mandolin, or you're singing, that
Sure.
have natural talent, but that doesn't mean that you can't be improved with even people who have natural talent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I like to talk in terms of maybe they have a propensity towards that.
Right.
And then if they'll also do their due diligence and then just start working on that nice tool that they've already been gifted with, so to speak. I get this sometimes when somebody approaches me with wanting my evaluation of a young singer. And they say, what do you think? I mean, aren't they just fabulous? And here's what my response is 9 times out of 10. So, yes, they are. They're extremely talented and gifted. I can't wait to hear them when their voice matures a little bit more. And then I almost get this funny look. I said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You didn't think they were good? I said, I did not say that. But I said, right now, they still have a lot of room to develop just physically, and their voice. There'll be a maturing that comes on down the road, especially if they keep at it, and if they keep working at it, and if they keep trying to better themselves and to learn from others and learn from themselves.
Yeah, and that's certainly, again, in hanging around in the vocal world as I do, that's one thing that I really appreciate is that actually the more mature you are, that your voice does continue to develop. I think there's so many preconceived ideas that the quality of your human body is going to deteriorate over a certain amount of time. But actually, when you're singing, again, it's exercise, it's using that muscle, it's practice. So let's switch over to guitar a little bit, because you're also doing teaching around guitar and lots of that. So what's your affinity to the guitar? You've said maybe not banjo, mandolin, or fiddle. So why guitar?
Well, that was definitely my first instrument and my first love. And I mean, I love the guitar. I love watching guitar players. Early on, I was a big fan of the Hee Haw show on TV.
Okay.
And I thought Roy Clark and Chet Atkins were some of the greatest guitar players in the world, Jerry Reed and others. And then I was introduced to bluegrass pretty early on too. And I loved Larry Sparks and George Shuffler and Doc Watson, of course. And then I was introduced to guys like Clarence White and Tony Rice and Norman Blake and others. And then it just seemed like after Tony Rice and Dan Prairie was another one, Don Reno. I love Don Reno's guitar playing as well, the great banjo player of Reno and Smiley. But then it seemed like after Tony Rice, it just like the floodgates opened. And there were all of these like dozens and dozens of extremely accomplished guitarists. I mean, the level of playing, and that's also with the other instruments in the bluegrass ensemble as well. It just seemed like the technicality and the, what's the word I'm looking for? Virtuosity level just exploded. And now there's so many incredible pickers out there these days. It's a great time in which to live, to be listening to bluegrass instrumentally these days, because the stylistic variety, the virtuosity is at levels so far above what it was when I was listening in the early days of my affinity with bluegrass.
So how do you go from, I would call it imitation of the people that you're listening to developing your own style?
I think it's the same way I do anyway with guitar or any other instrument. It's the same way it is with your voice. Even when you're learning to sing, and particularly when you're concentrating not so much on just singing in tune and getting good tone, but you're learning to phrase things. So you listen to your favorite singers and you start mimicking them. Same way it is with, I think, learning an instrument. You have your favorite pickers that you listen to over and over and over, and you try to learn those licks, note for note, the dynamics as well. And so you kind of get that underneath you. And to the point where you feel comfortable, you say, now I have this like bag of licks. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on my phrasing with this and the way that I attack this solo, almost as if I take the same approach with picking a guitar solo as I do in singing a solo. And there's certain aspects, there's certain phrases that I want to highlight and do something special with, as opposed to, well, don't you want to do something special with the entire instrumental break or solo? Well, yes, but there are certain phrases within the instrumental break that I really want to lift out and do something special with. Because to me, when I'm listening to a soloist and an instrumentalist, there are only certain aspects of the break that really stand out to me. And that's what I remember. And that's what I take home with me. And that's what I embed as to what, that's what made that solo. So that's kind of the approach that I take when I'm constructing a solo on the guitar, is to think about what piece of that 2 or 3 phrases do I really want to do something special with, and highlight that. Now I'm talking more about just soloing and flat picking. But to me, in bluegrass, rhythm guitar is so overlooked, and its importance to the entire ensemble sound. You know, all of the instruments are unique, and they make their own unique contributions to the ensemble sound. But to me, rhythm guitar, partnered with the upright bass, and then also complementing the rhythmic aspect of the mandolin, those 3 instruments form this big fat groove that everything else just kind of rides on. And so when the guitar, the bass, and the mandolin have this rhythm section that's really rocking, I mean, there's nothing like it in the world. And I think it elevates the banjo and the fiddle, the dobro. And then when the mandolin does take a break, there's this nice big fat groove that the soloists lay their portions on, their solos and their backup stuff as well. And then even the contribution that it makes to the vocals. Not that the rhythm section is still big and fat and wide, but it's not overpowering the vocals. It's supporting. So to me, I take as much care in, if you would, constructing and thinking about my rhythm playing as I do my solo.
Do you think that fat groove is what makes bluegrass bluegrass?
I do. That's definitely my opinion, because we talk about the drive of bluegrass and we talk about how it's like, as far as the relationship of one genre to where you're playing with the beat, are you right in the center of the beat? Are you kind of coming up behind the beat? Are you ahead of the beat? Normally we say that bluegrass is just a tad on the front edge of the center of the beat or right in the center of it. Whereas country music and folk, a lot of Americana, is kind of just a little on the backside of the beat and kind of has a little bit more of a laziness about it. Whereas bluegrass has that drive. And you almost feel exhausted after not only playing it, but listening to it.
But that's the part that energizes me as well when I'm in it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm breathing in. Okay, so here's my specific challenge around the guitar. I would say I have become decently proficient with rhythm, and I'm an expert at taking those breaks where you hold the chord and you go,
Yes.
do, 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 do. Like I can do that. Man, I'm if they had competitions for that, I would be winning that competition.
Awesome.
It's the picking up of my fingers and making them move during a solo, especially if it's not one that I've actually sat down to say, I'm going to take a break now, like in a performance where this is my break and I've practiced it.
Yeah.
So I'm challenged by actually making my fingers move in those moments.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, Liz, I applaud you for, as you said, like picking out of the chord, because that's one of the things that I emphasize when I'm teaching flat picking is the importance of what I call covering your chord shape and not just picking individual notes, like taking one or two fingers. It's kind of like like when you were learning typing in high school, you know how you had your home instead of the hunt method? You were taught the home keys and then going from the home keys to the other keys. And that's what increased your characters per minute rate, your typing speed, was that you felt comfortable at home. And then instead of the hunt and peck method. And so to me, covering the chord shape is kind of like learning to type correctly from the home keys. And when I illustrate to my students in guitar workshops is that, for one thing, the melodic structure of bluegrass songs is so simple that as you're picking out the melody, it's almost like an economy of motion thing. If you cover a chord shape, you're like, say you're picking a song in G. And the first couple of notes is going to be like G, A, B. So dun, 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 dun. And so what I do a lot of times is I'll pick that G, A, and then I'll slide up to the B and cover that F-shaped G chord at the third fret. And then a lot of times what I've got then is that when I'm covering that J, I can get 2, 3, 4, 5 other melody notes or additional in between the melody notes by just covering that shape. And then so now the work that I'm doing is with my right hand instead of with my left hand. And so I'm getting all of those notes, but my left hand isn't moving. So it's kind of a economy of motion thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's because of what you said earlier that made me think of that, about playing those notes out of the chords. And to me, that's so important to me, that's kind of like the home keys
Yeah, I
on,
love
on
that
the typewriter.
analogy.
So when you're learning the flat pick, don't forget your basic rhythm shape either, like your three note chords, your simple triad chords, like that F shape, that simplified F shape, the D shape, and then the B shape, which is the way Mel Bay first taught us how to play a B chord, was with our index finger down, then 2 frets up with our middle finger, ring finger, and our pinky. So there's just like 3 or 4 3-note chord shapes that if you'll commit those to memory and learn how to cover those when you're flat picking, it's going to make a tremendous difference in your speed and in your noting, in your solo, because you'll already be there. You're not looking for the note because your fingers are already over probably the next 2, 3, 4, 5 melody notes that you need.
Great food for thought, and I'm going to really put that into my guitar practice for sure. So as the listeners can hear, Greg's an awesome teacher, and that is definitely a part of your professional world in music, is teaching. Do you teach privately as well?
I do. I'm not so much I have a curriculum that I take an individual student through. I take the coaching approach. And that is, I'll first of all have you send me, just like sit down and record a few songs. And then I'll just make an assessment and see where you are. And then what I like for you to do is to pick about 3 or 4 songs, and we'll sit down together over Zoom and work through them. And as you're learning them and as you're working them up, I will make suggestions and look for any, like, if there's any bad habits maybe that you've developed or that you're on the verge of developing, like just basic technique, and then point that out and give you some exercises to work through to help correct that. But that's usually the approach that I take. And then just kind of just assessing, diagnosing where you are, and then helping you get over any obstacles that you're coming up against to get you to the next level.
Great. So we can't have this interview without talking about special consensus.
Oh, of course not.
So from what I understand, of the 50 years that Special Consensus has been in, you've been part of the band for a few of those years yourself.
Yep. I started my 6th year with Special Consensus at the beginning of 2026.
What do you think has the band be together after 50 years? And obviously it's not all the original members, but the spirit of the band, the structure of the band, what has it still be going?
Well, of course, at the heart of Special Consensus is its founder, Greg Cahill. And Greg, he's not just a performer. He's not just a band leader. He's been an ambassador for and to bluegrass his entire career. He's been heavily involved in IBMA. He was the chairman for a few years. He's been granted the Distinguished Achievement Award from IBMA. He's been inducted into the Hall of Greats in IBMA. And a lot of people have looked at the band Special Consensus almost as a proving and training ground for a lot of young musicians as well, who have come into Special Consensus, been with the band 2 to 10 years, and then gone out and learned from Greg how to be a band leader and all of the mechanics and all of the behind the scenes stuff that goes into running a band and making it run smoothly. And then they've gone out on their own and become band leaders themselves. Now the same way with Doyle also as well. Greg Cahill has been that kind of mentor to a lot of young musicians. But I think one of the things that has contributed to the longevity of the Special Consensus is not only just Greg's prowess and his uncanny knack and ability to keep a band going and going well. But the Special Consensus has always been about the members of the band and not just the band leader or not just whoever's out the front man, whatever, the front person or whatever. And I don't think Greg would mind me saying this because I've heard him say it several times in conversations. He says, it's never Greg Cahill and the Special Consensus. It's just the Special Consensus. And so he's always taken a very democratic approach to the decision-making in the band, what we record, what we perform, so forth and so on. Over the years, Special Consensus has almost kind of developed a quote-unquote sound that they've carried through the entire 50 years. Now, of course, one of the constants, of course, has been the banjo, so I'm sure that helps keep that consistency over the 50 years as far as the sound is concerned. But all the various members who have come and gone in and out of the band, there's been this two-pronged approach, I think. This an observation of my own from knowing Greg for many years, knowing the band for many years, and now being a part of it, is that there's always been a faithfulness to that quote-unquote sound. And I think the way that I would describe that is they've always wanted to have a fresh approach to any song that they've done, whether it's an original, whether it's a cover of a bluegrass standard, or whether it's a cover from some other genre. But they always wanted kind of a fresh approach to it. But then also, in addition to that faithfulness to that sound, Greg has always encouraged every band member that has come into the Special Consensus to accentuate their own uniqueness. So in other words, you don't leave your individuality at the door when you come into Special Consensus. You bring it into the band. And you're allowed to express that individuality while you also make a commitment to be loyal to that sound that has developed over the years. Greg just has an uncanny way of being able to encourage that without it seeming like he's lording it over. But this is the way it's going to sound. There's just that, almost that appreciation for the sound that the band has developed over the years. And so any new member who comes in will acquiesce to that, but also Greg will encourage them to bring their individuality into the band as well. So with every configuration, it's always just fresh and edgy. It's been a delight to be a part of the band and make my contributions to the band while at the same time paying homage to all of the great singers who've come through that band. I think there's been an overall 53 members.
Wow, in 50 years.
Yeah, in the band, with only one banjo player.
Wow. Just goes to show all those banjo players are the most important part of the whole thing, right?
There you go. There you go. As much as we hate to admit it.
As much as we hate to admit it. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really want to thank you for taking this time to be with me. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope people get a chance to see you somewhere out in the world. But if not, what's the best way for people to be in touch with you?
Well, there's my website, Liz, and that's music.com. No underscores or anything like that. Just GREGBLAKEMUSIC.com. There's that. And then I also have a little presence on social media as well, Facebook and Instagram primarily. That's how you can keep up with me, is Facebook and Instagram, and then my website, gregblakemusic.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for everything, for this conversation. And
Well, thank you. It's been a fun afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
yeah. All right. And I encourage all the listeners to look up Greg Blake.
Liz and I wanted to share our impressions and recollections of the recently concluded Grey Fox Bluegrass Festival. We will be bringing you a full-length episode, but this is sort of while it's still fresh in our mind. So first of all, Liz, we really had a great time being podcast in residence up there. My experience there was very, very smooth. I guess is the only word I can use. We had a booth, as you know, and that needed to get set up. It was ready for us to go start setting up on. A few minor things had to be attended to. There was somebody, shout out to Jenny, thank you, Jenny, who was right on top of everything. And when we needed someone to take the flap off the front of the tent and, run an extension cord, all of those things, it was all done timely and effortlessly. So as far as organization and setup is concerned, my experience was this was probably the smoothest festival I've ever been involved with. What was your take, Liz?
Something that really stands out to me is just how well run this festival is. They think of so many details. Anytime I needed anything, I went over to that VIP check-in tent, and they were so accommodating for me in so many ways. And yes, we had that booth. I'll freely admit there wasn't one single minute that I sat at that booth.
You did stand in it for a minute, though. You were standing there.
I stood a couple times, checked in on Mike. He seemed to have that all handled. I was more like the field correspondent.
There you go.
I took a huge stack of the cards and I gave them out to about a bazillion people. One of the most thrilling things is when we hear from people that say, yeah, I've listened to your podcast, that
right.
You almost just can't believe that there are actual real people out there listening to this,
Yeah. We also hosted a couple of jams, and they were all great, but one was particularly notable, at least in my mind.
Yes. The second night was the Women's Voices Jam. I had invited all the members of Della Mae to show up, starting with Vicky, because I needed a bass player, and all four of the incredible women from Della Mae who are just so committed to being accessible and bringing the joy of bluegrass. They did some tremendous sets, and then they all four showed up. So between Vicky's bass playing and Celia's singing and Avril's guitar breaks and Kimber, I will never forget the sight of her sitting down close to this 5-year-old girl that came in and sat next to her and told her how to do the break. I have to say that I feel like I know that they came out of a joy in their heart to contribute, but I know they left having experienced a really beautiful thing with the women singing, and then lots of men were there too. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was awesome. I got to take a break from the booth and wander past and listen. And the reason I needed to get back is because I think we gathered something like 75 Grey Fox stories. We invited members of the Grey Fox community to come by and tell their stories. Shout out to Emma Turoff, who was the first Grey Fox storyteller, who casually mentioned that she had been to 21 Grey Foxes, and my mind quickly snapped to the fact that she's 22 years old. So it was a great story. And we found out that there's so many people who had and were very happy to share with us Grey Fox stories. The range of people offering Grey Fox stories was incredible. They ranged in age from 8 to 88. Some, like myself, were there for the very first time, and there was at least one woman celebrating her 53rd Grey Fox. We will be bringing those to you both in our posts on most social media and in the episode coming up. So that was a tremendous amount of fun. We also got to meet some of the artists who we've interviewed. So a couple of people stopped by who we knew, and we got to meet some new artists, notably Reggie Guillaume, otherwise known as Guitaro 5000, who was a New York City subway busker who started inviting people to sing their song. He's embarking on a 30-country tour over the next 10 years. Talk about intrepid. I want to share one non-musical experience that sticks in my mind the most. If you know Grey Fox at all, one end is High Meadow. It's a hill, overlooks the campgrounds and the whole festival. And I got up there, I guess it was towards sunset, and I looked out over the sea of tents and RVs and thought, my goodness, a city has appeared out of nowhere. And I spoke to the organizer, Mary Burdett, and she said, yeah, we are the third largest community in Greene County for 4 days. About 8,000 souls between attendees, vendors, and so on. And what I quickly learned is that it was, in fact, a community. Everybody was incredibly nice, helpful. All week long, people were just kind, helpful, considerate, comradely. The music was incredible, but that was probably the most outstanding feature to me of the festival.
That is most certainly the Grey Fox way. And I have experienced that for all the years that I've been going, for sure. And the other aspect of Grey Fox that I love so much is the jamming.
Yeah.
So I was very consistent in going to bed at 3 a.m. and that was my limit this time. I didn't do any all-nighters. And each night I got to play with amazing, fun musicians. And then you would cross paths with them in the dance tent. And then the next day you'd see them on the strip. It's so much fun to do that jamming. There's just something for everyone there, without a doubt.
Absolutely. There was some absolutely incredible music. I do want to shout out to one of our locals, J.M. Clifford, who did a great set up against Del McCoury, and he still had people sitting in the tent there, which was incredible.
And the most touching moment of the festival for me was on Sunday morning for Ron Thomason's final gospel set at Grey Fox. He's retiring, 82 years old. He's retiring after 50 years of doing that. We laughed and we cried. And at the very end, we all stood up. He asked us to stand and we all sang together. And I just looked around and we were all crying. Also, they put his face on a stick. You know how they do?
Yeah.
And they gave us buttons. And so we all waved him. And at the very end, he said, "I'll never forget you." And it was just the most beautiful way to end our Grey Fox experience this year. And we will miss him for sure.
Very touching. So thank you very much, Grey Fox, for having us come do the podcast in residency. It was an incredible experience. We got to meet so many great people, and we got to hear so many great stories.
It really was, for me, one of the best Grey Foxes. I say that every year.
Yeah.
I've never not said that was one of the best ones, but we just are so blessed to have such an incredible diversity of experiences that we can have there. And again, thank you to Grey Fox for your hospitality. Well, I had such a wonderful time speaking with Greg. Of course, I had spent some time with him in other learning situations. So my agenda was to pick his brain some more and really get some more information. And boy, did I ever.
Yeah, it was an incredible interview. One thing that struck me and I enjoyed it particularly was his experience getting his first IBMA Male Vocalist Award, where it's like, oh, I got nominated. That's incredible. And he said, all right, that's that, huh? And then I'm in the next round. Wow, I'm in the next round. I'll go to the award ceremony and help celebrate whoever actually wins. When he gets announced, his wife had to nudge him like, that's you, get up.
That's so Greg to not have prepared an acceptance speech. Of course he didn't, because he's just so generous in supporting and uplifting other people.
Anyway, please remember to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Like, subscribe to, and listen to the podcast. Let your friends know. Visit bluegrassbrooklyn.com. If you like, drop a line, Mike@bluegrassbrooklyn.com or Liz@bluegrassjamsnearme.com. And if you're looking for jams in Uptown Manhattan, the West Side, Bronx, Riverdale, New Jersey, and around the world, bluegrassjamsnearme.com. So, Liz, anything else?
Thank you for listening.
And we look forward to seeing you around the jam circle.
I wasn't looking for love, love found me. It came out of the blue, just like a storm on the sea. It took a hold of my heart.